Hi, I'm Sambo Patrick, and this is the Men's Healthy Edge, the podcast where I sit down with men from all walks of life, athletes, health experts, entrepreneurs, and everyday legends, as we unpack what it really means to have the edge. This is general information only, and I would love it if you liked, loved, and shared it with your mates and left a review. Together, let's find out what the edge is all about. Hello and welcome to Men's Healthy Edge. You're with Sambo Patrick, and today I'm with Guy Leech. Now, Guy is a superhero when I grew up, and I sometimes get a little bit starstruck, even though I know lots of people. But over the years, particularly when I was playing a lot of young sport in my 20s, Guy was a man we looked up to as an Ironman, someone who pushed through barriers that people in the day just weren't doing, and he showed what the human is possible of achieving when they have a bit of grit and determination. So I know your story has changed since then. You're in high performance and you've had very successful businesses. And thank you, Guy, for joining us today for this chat. I'm really
Happy
looking
to be
forward
here,
to it.
Sam. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Be good to have a chat to you.
Yeah, so could you take us back? I ask everyone just for their own little intro on where they started off, maybe a little bit about your childhood, growing up as a young man in this country, if you did grow up in Australia, just
Mm.
a little bit about stuff you used to do after school. Just give us a little sense of what young Guy was like.
Yeah, so grew up around. Well, I originally was born in Melbourne, and my parents split. My brother and I moved to Sydney with our mum, and that was, I think, from memory, I think I started kindergarten in Melbourne, and then sort of jumped. I think it was first grade that I started up in Sydney, and we moved to Mossman, which is sort of just back in from along the harbour from the northern beaches of Sydney. There's the Spit Bridge. If you ever have been caught in traffic on the Spit Bridge, you'd know the area very well. But so I was brought up there, and funnily enough, I'd never been taught to swim, and we used to have a backyard pool, and my mum took me down to Balmoral Beach when I was 8 years of age and said, "Oh, we should give you a lesson on just so you know what you're doing." And so I remember jumping in and doing this lesson at 8, and I could swim really well. And the teacher said, "You should get him in the pool and start training." And that was my first experience with doing, proper sports training. And so I did the swimming thing for well, at the age of 16, I represented Australia in the pool. So I got to a level that I was at the higher end. So I represented Australia as an age group swimmer.
What
Um,
um what event was that?
so I was good at breaststroke and medley. So
Right.
was national champion at breaststroke from the age of 9 through, and then hit 16. And there was this sort of crossroad where at 16, when I made a team, it was still that later that year was the Olympic trials. And I competed in those two events, 200 breaststroke and 400 medley, and missed by a bit, but not too much to go to the Olympics. And there was enough sort of interest there to go, you know what, 4 years' time, I'll be bigger, stronger, and better, and I'm a good shot at this. And it was 2 years after the trials that I was at home and I was watching on television after dinner with my mum and brother, and lo and behold, Grant Kenny came on the screen promoting Kellogg's Nutri-Grain,
Mm.
and there were these visions of him busting through the surf on the board and the ski and running up the beach and to the crowd, and then it cut to him taking a mouthful of Kellogg's Nutri-Grain, and he turned to the camera and said, "Tastes great, stays crunchy," and that was it. It had me right. So I was like, "No, no, I'm going to be an Ironman now." So I'd never even been in a surf club. I was a swimmer, and probably within a week or so, I joined Manly Surf Club and wanted to do what Grant Kenny did. And 2 years later, so by this stage I'm 18, turning 19, and I was 18 at the time, and a poster on the wall at the Surf Club had this event called the Cooling Out of Gold, and it was born out of a movie. The movie was about to launch, and there was this unbelievable race on the Gold Coast that was a marathon. Nothing had ever been like that before. I'd done a year and a half of Ironman training from my swimming career and was just sort of learning the trade. And in 4 months' time, there was this big race on the Gold Coast, which was there to help promote the movie and use footage from the real race to cut into this pretend movie script. So anyway, so I rocked up to the Gold Coast and it was a 46-kilometre race, paddling,
What were the
swimming.
legs? So it
And,
was so
yeah, it was.
46 Ks. Was it up? Yeah, take us through what the actual legs were, because that's it's a
You
long haul
started at
race.
Surface Paradise,
Right.
and I'll go through the legs, but you had to get
Yeah.
down to Coolangatta and get back to Surface Paradise, and
And
that
not
was
in a car for people who are listening who aren't
yeah,
too
yeah,
sure. This
and
is an ocean event.
not in a taxi, not in a bus, not walking. It was 46 kilometers, and they also put the race on in January, so it was the middle of summer, and as we know, with Queensland, super hot, and so anyway, so the distances in this event, and I think the thing to remember is that an Ironman race takes 15 minutes to do. This race over 46 kilometres
Mm,
was 4.5 hours to 5 hours to complete. So
mm.
you're going from basically a sprint to doing a double marathon in time, as a sort of a comparison. But anyway, the race was started surface run towards Coolangatta, 11 kilometres on the sand, and then put your swimming goggles on, rip your shoes off, and swim five
Hang
kilometres.
on, 11 kilometers running on the sand. I'm lucky to do 50 meters and my thighs burn,
Yeah.
let
So
alone
yeah, so that
calves.
was that was the start of the
Right.
morning.
Wow.
And it was 33 degrees when we started the race at 8 in the morning.
Mm.
And then you jumped in and swam. You kept swimming towards Coolangatta 5 kilometres. Then you got out, you put some running shoes back on again if you wanted, and you ran another 4. And then you got to your board, your long board, your paddle board, and you paddled that down the rest of the way to Coolangatta, which was another 5K. And then when you got to Coolangatta, your surf ski, your surf kayak was sitting there with another 100 on the beach. And you grabbed your ski and you paddled it all the way back from Coolangatta to Surface Paradise in 33-degree heat. And that was the race. So they promoted it all around the world to get the best sort of aquatic athletes to turn up for this event. And in 1984, they put $20,000 worth of gold on the event for the
That's
winner.
that's
And there was second and third place, a bit less money. And somehow I turned up with less than 2 years of Ironman experience. And they ran a sort of a bookie type betting for this event. And I was the
was
worst of
20K. Sorry, Guy, 20K back then, talking for
20
nearly 40 years ago. That would,
20,000. It was over 100 grand today.
yeah, which for a sporting event, particularly on the beach,
Well, there
is
was never any money in the sport. It was the first time ever that there was any
mm,
money given to anyone doing an Ironman event. So it's the
right.
first time ever in the
Yeah.
history of the sport that started in 1964. So it
Mm.
was 1966, it might have been. So anyway, so yeah, look, I was 40 to 1 to win the race. I won't go through the whole race, but I can tell you that somehow I got from I got from Service down to Coolangatta. I got down there a minute and a half in front of the
Mm.
field of another 100 athletes from all over the world in Australia. And somehow I clawed my way back on a surf ski back to Surface Paradise and won by a minute and a half to the next person and won the race and picked up $20,000 worth of gold. And in the history of sport, I'm probably one of the very few that went into a race completely unknown to anyone other than family and friends in the country. And by the next morning, when the media had done its bit with this huge event, I was a household name within a day.
Yeah, that's how
So
it happened. Woof.
that was odd. That was odd. That was weird, right? So
Mm.
there was a weirdness to winning it because I didn't expect to win. Although a guy that saw me train leading up to it told a mate in Queensland that was quite wealthy and he owned the Queensland Hotel at Coolangatta, the Coolangatta Hotel, and he put $500 on me to win, and he
Mm.
picked up $20,000 in for me winning the event. But
Maybe
other
he can
than
buy you a
that, no
beer.
one, no one gave me a hope in hell, and somehow I won it, right? And that was the start. Yeah.
So, obviously, do you remember the race now? Like, do you go
I
back
remember bits. I
mentally?
remember bits of it. So it was. So I turned 61 this year, and I was just turned 19 at the time. So it was a long time ago now. It was 40 odd years. And yeah, the memory's a funny thing. I remember bits and pieces of the race that I can still I remember being at the start and being so nervous and thinking, I've just got to finish this thing and get through it, and
Mm.
not embarrass myself. And I remember how hot it was in the morning. I remember how big the crowds were. There was like 250,000 people, they reckon, on the coast watching the event along the beaches. And I remember counting 15 helicopters in the air filming it before we started. So they're all little things I remember. I definitely remember coming in on the wave on the ski into the beach to finish and running up the beach and going, geez, it's easy to know where I go because there was no sand other than people everywhere and just that little corridor of sand to the
Mm.
finish line because there was so many people on the beach. So they're all things I remember. Yeah.
Who came second that time?
So there was a guy called Hayden Reese from the Gold Coast that got second, and my teammate Craig Riddington got third, who I trained with for a lot of my career as well. Yeah.
Mm. And so does that throw you straight away into a new career path, a new circle of friends, a new expectation that everyone has upon you? Such a
Mhm.
huge event and such a massive result from an
It
unknown
was a
guy.
unique, yeah, it's a unique situation, right? So,
Mm.
out of all my life, things that have happened, that was one day that basically changed the direction and the momentum and my life more than any other thing.
Mm.
I went from being, I've left school, I might go to uni, I'll do Ironman because it's fun and I love doing it. I'll train hard and see how I go, to I just made $20,000 in gold. I've got companies wanting to give me money to endorse products. I've now got a manager. There's other races popping up where I could win money, and that was all. And then the other thing was I went from turning up on the day of the race and no one staring at me and no one coming up to me other than my friends, to the next day, anytime I walked anywhere, everyone was staring at me and whispering. And so that was really weird. So there was no build up to that.
Mm.
So all the good parts of it was I went on this journey of the Ironman sport became professional. There was a national series. There was a breakaway between us and surf lifesaving, and there was a cereal wars, and there was a forced market of us getting paid much more money because of the two series. And I went through probably the 15 years of the sport that were the most exciting, and it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I lived through all of that. So
Oh.
all of that was weird. The thing that was probably the saving grace for me was when you're in a surf club, you're just like everyone else,
Mm.
and the nicknames you get, and like whether I'm on television that night or promoting a product in an ad or whatever, no one gives a shit down the surf club.
No.
You've still got your funky nickname. People still treat you like anyone else, and so that was probably a saving grace, to just the amount of attention and just the how big the sport was, from the mid '80s to the mid '90s. Yeah.
Do you think it's as big now, the sport?
It's not even a crumb close to that. No,
Mm. It's a
no. I
shame
mean,
because it
back,
was such an Aussie thing, wasn't it? The
yeah, it was
blonde hair,
huge.
blue eye, Oz quintessential sport, and it took
Yeah,
off.
bronzed Aussie,
Mm.
tanned, blonde, muscular, healthy personification of what people thought at the time was, what Australia was all about with the beaches and everything. I think it was a moment in time that, if you're a young person now, you wouldn't be able to relate because there was only channel 7, 9, and 10 to get your sport.
Mm.
There's no internet. You had a video recorder at home you could record something, but it was you, everyone would see what you did if you're on Channel 9 or Channel 7 or whatever it was with a live telecast of your sport, and you had a lot of people watching it, and so when it was at its peak, the sport, all the surf clubs had barbecues on a Sunday afternoon where all the members would come down and they'd have a barbecue and drinks to watch the Ironman race on television. And
Mm.
hundreds would turn up to each different surf club to do those sort of things. So it was a rare time. Like for me to explain to my kids what it was like would be hard for them to even fathom.
Yeah, I agree. It really, because I've lived through it, I'm only a couple of years younger than you, and
Mm.
that was very much, there was Australian cricket and there was Booney, and
Yeah,
we're coming out of the Dennis Lilly era. Like for some reason,
yeah,
cricket had a huge heyday, and it was really before NRL, was kind
yeah.
of
We
commercialized
we
on
would have been
TV.
bigger than NRL. Like the
For sure.
summer of sport was cricket, Ironman, and
Mm,
when the Australian Open tennis was on.
that's right.
That
And
was
we all
it. That
grew
was
up
it.
doing them,
That was summer. That was summer. That was just summer. That's what
Yeah.
you watch. You watch the cricket. You watch the Ironman race that was on a given weekend on a Sunday afternoon for 3 hours. And when the Australian Open tennis was on, then you had 2 weeks of tennis at the back end of summer. Yeah.
And they were our heroes. Those sporting, the people who
Mm.
won those events and found they were in fame all of a sudden, or not funnily enough, they became s symbols of what you were just saying, the personification of health and what every Aussie aspired to be.
They were good characters too back then too. Like that whole, there's this level of evening out people's characters because of social media, sterilization of just the interesting characters in sport that you don't get now, just
Mm.
because of the fear of, sort of, doing the wrong thing and getting caught out and all the rest of it. The David
The
Boone.
cheekiness is gone.
Yeah, it's just different, right? I mean, I get that
Mm.
we're in different times, and maybe we would have got ourselves in strife today if we were around with some of the fun that we had after races and all the rest of it back in our day. But it was like it was innocent back then. You could do whatever you wanted, and there was less rules, and it was just more fun. I think there was more
Yeah.
fun back in our day.
I
So
know it's almost like now you watch elite athletes and the recovery, it's almost like they're machines,
yeah.
it's so well thought out that they're recovering before the race is finished or the game's finished and they're very they're
Well, they've
owned
been
by the club.
sterilised, right? They've been sterilised from a personality point of view too. They're too scared to say what they think. We're in this time where, the minority are the noisy ones, and if you go and step over the line, they're screaming at you through the different, pathways to
The
make
voice.
noise, social media and all that. And so people just give in. They just go, well, fuck it, I just won't even say anything. I just won't even give my point of view because it's not worth it. Mm.
So do you think sports lost a bit of its appeal?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Like so sport is only as big as the stars that, are at the top of the tree at the time. Like, so when tennis was big in Australia, Pat Rafter was
Mm.
at the top of the tree in the top three players, and he was exciting and he was good looking and he was a good bloke, and we all rallied behind him being Aussies. And it was the same when Greg Norman was, at the
Oh
top
yeah.
of the tree in golf. It was like, mate, here's this bloke that looks like an Aussie. He's blonde. He struts down the fairway. And like everyone loved golf at the time because of
Mm.
it.
Mm.
So, sports is only as big as the stars you have at the time carrying it. And you don't get the opportunity to really understand the stars of today because, yeah, they're sterilized
Yeah.
through just the way society is.
Yeah, bit of a shame in a lot of ways. I
Yeah.
the off the off-ground antics, made it all more entertaining in a
Yeah.
way.
They're good stories, right? Some of that,
Yeah,
all that stuff off the field and all the rest of it.
yeah.
Anyway, it is what it is, right?
It
So,
is what it is.
yeah.
So how many years did you have in competition on the beach? And was it all
But
Ironman? Did
yeah,
you?
I was a professional sports person from 1984, and then I got out in 1996.
Right.
So and
12
like,
years.
yeah, and I got the best of the growth of the sport, I suppose, the excitement part of it. I know you've had Trevor Hendy on,
Yeah.
and so he would say the same thing, that we got the exciting, we got lucky that we got the exciting part of the journey of the growth of the sport with
Mm.
all the fun stuff that happened around it. But the issue with our sport is it's really hard. Like the training you do to be really, really good at four sports within an event means you're training a lot.
Mm.
It doesn't matter whether you're super talented, doesn't matter whether you've been given God-given gifts as an athlete, there's still an amount of work you got to do to win. And that was the same for Trevor, and it was the same for me, and it was the same for Grant Kenny and all the other great Ironmen that come along. And unless you love it to death, what you do to your body and the amount of time you sacrifice to be the best, mate, is exhausting. It's
Yeah,
24/7, 7 days a week. Because even the day off on a Sunday you have, that rest you have, you don't want to do anything else because you're just
shattered.
tired. You need a break. I used to train 17 sessions a week. And
Yeah.
every session had a meaning and a purpose, and you had to keep getting better. And
Mm.
that was across, swimming in the pool, swimming in the surf, running on hard sand, soft sand, surf skills, board paddling in, big surf, little surf, and paddling a ski, which is completely different to all the rest of it, and being able to do that across all the different types of surf conditions that you'll get. So it was a really tough gig. And you could get guys coming into our sport that was so talented and so immensely good at what they did. And even then they couldn't win because you just had to have weapons all across the park and what we did. So it was like I tapped out in the end because I just didn't feel like I could do enough training mentally to be able to keep it going to get the results I needed to get. And that was when I said I'm out.
And so, there's sounds like there's a degree of obsession to be in that league. You're not doing it. I mean, the paycheck's not going to get you out of bed.
There's not enough money in our sport to do it just for the money, right? So
There
there was
probably
only a
isn't
few.
in many sports, even tennis,
No.
where we think they're played squillions. I mean, even Formula One,
But you'd
maybe.
need to be
I
in the
don't know.
top. You'd have to be in the top 100 in tennis in the world to be
Mm.
making a good living, right?
So
Or
there's got to be a degree of obsession and just something else inside, which you must have had at some point, particularly that first big race that you won, the Coolangatta Gold, where you just something said, I am going to be dogged about this and not give up.
I think you got like the number one ingredient to being great is a love for what you do. So
Yeah,
you've got
passion.
to love it. Just got to love the thing that you do, and usually you'll end up loving it more than everyone else, and you end up being the best in the world because you'll
Mm.
suffer and you'll go through all the ebbs and flows of the journey more than what someone else will because no one gets the a free pass into everything's good. I'm not going to get injured. I don't get sick. I don't go through a rut.
Because you would
Uh,
have gone through that in the 12 years.
Everyone does.
Yeah.
Everyone does. And so you can be like the most blessed athlete of all time, but it still doesn't mean you're going to win. Because if you
Mm.
don't love it as much as what someone else does, they work out a way of beating you because they
Mm.
love it more. They're willing to go and do what they need to do to go and outfox you with your talent to be better than you. So literally that's number one. And then all the other things that go into the mix as well, like your discipline, your motivation, your focus, your ability to build a team around you, your mental strength. And then even then that gets you into the top 5%. And then
Mm.
then you've got to go, well, what do I do now different to everyone else to get those little micro advantages to beat them, right? And then the other thing is when you get to the top and you're the best in the world, then it's like then you got to protect the mountain.
Mm.
How do you do that?
Mm.
Everyone knows that you're the person with the target on your back, and they're all out to get you.
Mm.
And that's what I felt that day in 1984 when I won the Coolangatta Gold. I walked off the beach going, "Can't believe I won," but now I've got a target on my back, and if I don't win again, everyone's going to think it was a fluke.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that when
100%.
you say to me, what do you remember? I remember all those other things. I remember what I did to win. I remember critical parts of the 4.5 hours in moments where I made decisions that were good decisions. And I remember my attitude. But then I also remember walking off the beach going, mate, savor this because you're the king for a day. But when tomorrow you wake up and it's all gone and done, if they do this thing again next year, you better work out how you're going to get better because you're not going to win unless you do. And that's why I walked off the beach thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. I've played a lot of sport and sometimes for Tassie, which we didn't historically go, we weren't as strong and we didn't have the depth of the other states,
Mm.
even, Australia as well in other circuits. But sometimes being the underdog without that, I've got to now defend my position of being number one. It's easier sometimes just going, I'm just going to have some fun and joy and just see how far I can push myself.
Yeah.
But that, yeah, that only lasts for that first big win, and then it
Well,
changes.
there's less pressure, right, if you're the underdog coming through because all the eyes aren't on you. I remember they brought the Coolangatta gold back the next year in '85, and Grant Kenny, who I put up on a pedestal and started doing the sport because of the TV commercial, he didn't race the first year because he was in the movie. He
Mm,
played himself in the movie and he was written into the script. And
mm,
so when we were out racing, he was at the finish line pretending with the cameras to do a sprint to the finish with the actors to see who was going to win the race. That was the pretend side of it. So anyway, so he fronted up against me the following year, and the media scrutiny that got brought out leading into the event, I'd never experienced anything like it. We were on the front page of every paper in Australia, the lead on every television show, you name it. Who's the best Ironman? Is it Grant Kenny or is it Guy Leech? And
mm.
and and I'd never felt because the first year was like, who the hell's this bloke that's won?
Yeah.
Never fucking heard of him, right? So then all of a sudden it's like, no, everyone knows who I am because I'm the defending champion. And in my own head, I'm saying, if I don't beat Grant Kenny in this race, everyone's going to think that I'm not as good as what I was the year before. And had he been there, he would have beaten me. So all I cared about was beating Grant Kenny in that second calling at a gold and making sure people didn't think that I was it was a fluke, right?
One
Which
hit
is
wonder. And what
yeah,
did
well, when
happen?
you're
What
younger,
was
that's
it?
what you care about, right? You care about what people think. So
Well, what was the outcome of that second race?
yeah, no, I destroyed them all.
Oh,
Yeah.
good. I was going to say that's
Well, I won by 4 minutes. So
right.
then I beat Grant he didn't even finish. He went there out in heat exhaustion, three-quarters of the way through the race. Um, so I did what I had to do. But the
Mm,
irony was that the first year was exhilaration and excitement winning. The
mm.
second year was relief and nothing beyond relief.
This was like a job that just had to get
Yeah.
done.
And so I had to get into my head and teach myself from that you can't just keep experiencing like you've done that now. You need to enjoy the journey because if you don't, you're not going to continue with this because it actually wasn't fun winning the second race.
Not feeling like yourself? Low energy, low drive, or maybe low mojo? It could be a testosterone. Get tested from home with my easy saliva kit. No needles and no GP. Head over to menshealthyedge.com and take the first steps. Your edge is waiting. So this is something I've hear about and I've also encountered. I was so focused on gold medals when I was an athlete. And people used to think some people are not wired that way. They love the
Mm.
training and the fun and the
Yeah.
camaraderie, and they're like, "Well, if we win a gold, we win a gold." And I just go, "What sort of an attitude's that?" If we're
Mm.
training this hard, there's only one thing on my mind, that's a gold medal. But when you've just raised a really good point, because if that is the only measure of how dedicated you've been, how focused you've been, how passionate you've been, how much you love and get rewarded, it's a bit of a gamble, really. 'Cause there's only
Well,
one winner.
the thing is that what inspires you, right? So for me it was the feeling of winning for me felt so good and so rewarding that I chased it all my career. Now I chase it in training. So
Mm,
if I trained in a group, I had to win the main set, the efforts in the training group. And that was every day. So I'd get these little wins every day that then would set me up for the race to then go into the main race with a country watching, with 10,000, 20,000 people on the beach cheering back in the day. And for me, that was living and being excited, but I was there to win. So if
mm.
I came off the beach coming third, I was disappointed, but I was even more disappointed if I wasn't in the fight to win. And so I had to feel like I was scrapping in the fight. And I didn't care whether I won pretty or whether I won ugly. It just didn't matter to me.
And
And
what do you mean by scrapping? Does that mean just absolutely flogging yourself to get there? Like, is that what
just
you
no,
mean?
just to be in the sniff for the win.
Right.
To be like, like in a race of 30 athletes in an Ironman race, there's only 5 guys that were really going to win.
Mm.
The rest were making up the numbers.
Yeah.
And and then it was a game of chess and making sure those other four, sat in a position within the hour and a half, 2 hour race where I had control, or hopefully had control of the situation to be able to get to the finish line first. And I love the endurance races because it was like playing chess.
Mm.
You just wasn't flat out and just see what happens. It was like you've got time to strategize and you
Mm.
got time to actually strategically work out a way of taking everyone down. And I never lost a race over 2 hours in my career. All those marathon races, I never lost one. And it was because I trained, my preparation, I thought was better than everyone else's. But secondly, in the heat of the battle, I didn't make mistakes because I was very focused and very clear on what I was doing. So
Did you burn out at any point?
I had little burnouts where I sort of got a bit sick of the training or had to freshen up, broke down getting sick or injured and had to come back from those. So they were like little mini. I wouldn't call them burnouts. I call them more like just you get a bit down on yourself, you
Lost
know.
your way a bit or whatever?
Yeah, just down, just a bit, like not as happy as what you'd want to be because of just those hurdles that came in. And then that comes back to this whole thing, how much you love it, right? So
Mm.
I had a car accident in 1988. A car hit me from behind at 80K and gave me nerve damage, and I was out for a year. I had all the
Mm.
muscles wasted away in my shoulder, had neck problems, couldn't lift up my my left arm to brush my teeth
Mm.
or wash my hair, and just had to train it up from scratch again. And it was such a slow process to get everything going again that, if you didn't love what you're doing, you just would have pulled the pin. It was
Mm.
just, I was at the
And you would
physio.
have been early 20s.
Yeah, it was like, yeah, it was just like, it was such a bad, and I didn't know whether I was going to be as good as what I was because my shoulder was like not the same.
Yeah.
And so, but I never once thought about pulling the pin and not doing what I was doing ever.
Mm. Mm.
Ever. So, when I retired, like I said, was when I went and had the break after the summer season, had 6 weeks off and thought, okay, now we go back to Noosa and we train for 16 weeks, doing 17 sessions a week with
Mm.
Sunday off for 16 weeks in a row to get ready to go and race again and be the best we can be.
Mm.
And I literally thought to myself, I can't do it. I
Mm.
can't go and see myself doing 16 weeks back to back of 17 sessions a week. And that's when I pulled the pin. Because I always knew that the workload that you did and the training you did set you up for the wins.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It
what
was
did
the
you do
work
after?
you did. Yeah.
So I'm not too sure what Ironmen do. They hang up their cozies, but what did you do after that? Like how did you transition out of something that was clearly taking up majority of your time and thought and was your whole focus?
Yeah. Yeah. It was the whole focus, right? So
Yeah.
I didn't have any other interests other than just doing what I was doing. That was it. I got lucky. So there's lots of sports people that they lose their way when they get
Mm.
out. And there's a direct correlation between the younger you are when you start and the more famous you are at a younger age in the sport that you're in, and the more you're revered in that sport, the bigger the fall, unless you've got something to go to when you're either forced to retire, you do retire, or whatever it is,
Yeah.
whatever the reason is that you
Because
get out.
that defines, I guess it's particularly when you're in those 18 to 24-year-old years, testosterone's going to its all-time high. And wrapped with that, yet the accolades, the fame, the notoriety, and it's probably double what your mates are. And then if that's not sustained, it's going to just go pop.
Well, it comes down to a psychological issue in that
Mm.
um, if you value yourself, and Trevor probably went into this when you spoke to him, but if you value yourself in a way that is only related to your last win,
Mm.
to your standing in society from a fame point of view, and all those things that aren't really real in essence, because they go away,
Yeah.
then you're in a lot of trouble. So if
Mm.
you see yourself, if that's what makes you happy, completely, and your self-esteem and who you see yourself as a person is wrapped up in that too much. Then when that gets taken away from you, which happens to every athlete once they retire, right? Because you're not going into a game and getting patted on the back the next week. You're not doing a race where the nation sees it and you've had a win and you walk down the street and everyone's like, how good was that, Leachy, mate? Well done. You're the king. Which you get patted on the back every day for, right? So when that all goes away and you value yourself as that person, then you got problems because you lose yourself, right? And then it's like, well, who am I and how do I value myself and all the rest of it? So
That
I got,
happens with retirement.
what's that?
That happens when people retire from work.
That's the same. It's the same deal, right? That if you
Yeah.
haven't got other things to go and step in for that, or you've sold your business
Mm.
and the value of you employing 50 people and you're the boss and you make good money every week and,
Significance is
and you
gone.
go into meetings and everyone reveres you because you're the business owner and you sell the business, you got all this money, but you feel empty
Empty.
inside, right?
Yeah.
So, I'm not going to say that I didn't get some of those feelings
Right.
because I'd be lying if I said I didn't, but I didn't get it as much as what I could have got because I went straight into commentary in the Ironman sport because it was still big.
Right.
And then also, I always knew that the fitness side in what I did, I loved.
Mm.
And so fitness and health was something that I was interested in. I liked the training. I enjoyed that part of it.
Mm.
And so because of it, it was like, well, I'm going to start a business and work out how I build a business in that fitness space using my name and my profile. And I was always sort of aware of the fact that I was lucky in that the sport went big.
Mm.
And yeah, I might have been part of it to help that a little bit because, like you're winning races and you got a profile and you got a personality that some people might like and follow and all the rest of it. But at the end of the day, you're lucky because you've got this platform that's building up your profile,
Mm.
just like people have to go and pay on social media to
Mm.
build a profile or a business and to advertise. We get that for free. We got that for free. And I was always very aware that that's a good stepping stone in anything else you do, particularly if you go and do something that's authentic to who you are. So if I could go and do something that's authentic to me and my so-called brand, then all that leg up that I got from the Ironman series of having me on live television for 30, 40 hours every summer, and all the companies pay me money to promote their product, then I could use that as an advantage. So I
Well,
sort of had a bit
you're
of a,
trusted.
yeah. And particularly if you're doing something that's authentic to you, right? So if
Mm.
I say to people, hey, listen, I'm a health and fitness expert. I think you should do this. Then most people would say, well, Guy Leech knows fitness. He's been healthy all his life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd listen to that. He's
Yeah.
creditable, right? So I
Exactly.
went down a path that was sort of similar to what the Ironman stuff was anyway, and I
Mm.
was interested in it, and I had a real care for it, and so I jumped straight into that and built that up. That was sort of the thing. So I had an interest, and at least I had a chance of just not feeling like I was rudderless in what I did.
Have you written a book yet?
I had a book back in the 80s called Summer Fitness that was sort of
Oh.
partly ghost written by a mate of mine who was a journo.
Right.
And it had the success of having a second or a third run. I don't even know what that means really, but it went reasonable. So
There you go. I was wondering if you had a book, what you'd call it now.
yeah, well, I'd probably call it now. Yeah, it'd probably be lessons learnt or something, like I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So, so there's congruency with, almost, I mean, you guys did, anyone who's been an elite athlete has worked hard. It hasn't come easy. And for all the people on the podium, there's, 100 that are training just as hard. They're just not making
mm,
those last five, as you say. But I mean, the skills that it gives you and the acumen and the dedication translates into business really nicely, I've always found. Like
yeah,
people who have had a background in sport, when you talk to them and you see them in business, you go, yeah, you understand strategy or competition or that
mhm,
passion that you're talking about. So
mm.
I suspect you've been really good in business, because of those
I
skills
think
as
you got to
well.
learn. I think. I think it's like anything. There is a direct correlation between the pillars of being a good athlete,
Mm,
whether it's individual or it's in a team basis, and and business. And in some ways, probably more an advantage if you're in a team because you learn how to work with others and you learn how you're only as strong as your weakest link and communication and all those things that come with a business environment. Definitely for me, the key to my success in business is doing something that I'm passionate about, like I was with Ironman. There's no doubt that unless I'm authentic to the thing in a business sense that I'm doing, it never goes as well. And I've tried, like I've had surf shops, I had 7 surf shops and end up selling them to Billabong years ago and some phone stores. And so I've always dabbled in business. I like business because I like the whole idea that a numbers it's like a race where it's real. You can see it, and you either win or lose. So I like that whole concept.
mm.
Never the same and the same emotional feeling as winning a cooling out of gold though. So
No.
nothing. I never get that feeling back again, unfortunately. But yeah, the business side, like it depends whether you go into business and work for someone and you're that person, you get very good at doing your role within a business or or you're an entrepreneur that wants to go and build something yourself,
Mm,
um, and you've got the drive and the interest to put it all on the line to be successful or fail, and and so for me it was always that I
mm,
sort of like the whole idea of building things, and I've probably learned as much from or more from the business failures that I've had over the years and all the learnings from that, as I did when I had a bad Ironman race. And I walked off the beach going, I made 3 mistakes here. I'm never going to make those 3 mistakes again, and learn as opposed to having the perfect race and winning and going, oh, that was easy. And the same with business. So yeah, so they're all sort of similar things. But I think the other thing is that generally in life, if you're curious
mm,
and you like learning,
mm,
then mate, you're ahead of most people because things change all the time. And
mm,
in Ironman, it was constantly changing in how's your training methods? What's your weakest link? How do you improve that? And you have to be curious all the time, how to make yourself better. And
mm,
if you've got that in business as well and something you're interested in, as things keep changing all the time, like we're in a world where disruption is just normal, right?
mm,
Things are tipped on their head all the time. Or businesses like Kodak and Video Easy would still be around today, but they
mm,
went under because they weren't curious enough.
mm,
They thought that what they did was fine and that was enough, and it wasn't, right? And
mm.
so I think there's that blend with that in there as well. And as I've got older, I literally use most mornings to do fitness, but also to learn. So I'm an advocate to podcasts and any spare time I've got where I'm driving or training, doing fitness. If I can, I'm listening to something to learn. And I find it very inspiring and I find it quite motivating to do that.
Yeah, and I'm listening to one at the moment actually, and he talks about business failures. It's more down the ilk of business rather than fitness, but he talks
Mm.
about
They're the
how
only ones I listen to are business ones.
right, okay.
Ironically, yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so have you thought about do you have failures that you go, that happened then and I'm never making that mistake again?
Without doubt. Like, brought the wrong people into partner in a business and they literally ruined the business. That was one of the ones I had. Picking a business where I'm not in love with that space enough and could see the opportunity from a money point of view, but just like we said before, just not willing to do enough hurt because you don't love it enough. And
Mm,
so, you just end up pulling the pin on it because it becomes too hard, right? So, mate, there's very few businesses that are overnight successes that, make a fortune. Like they're rare. They're like unicorns.
mm,
Just doesn't happen. Just like in sport. Like, yeah, I won a calling at a gold, but I trained for 11 years in the pool
mm,
before that, training every day to get endurance and to
mm,
be an impressive swimmer and to have fitness and an understanding of how to train as a lead into that race prior to that. So people could say, oh, he's an overnight success, but I was training from the age of 8. that all
Mm.
helped to give me that advantage. And one of my coaches was the Olympic swimming coach. So I learned how to set training sessions up and do all the things you need and was mentally tough. And it's the same in business. So yeah, I've had plenty where made the wrong marketing decision, picked the wrong product, got the price point wrong, didn't have enough money to continue with driving the
That's
business.
when that happens. You just only
Yeah,
have a little bit
and
more,
just had to tap out because there was and too scared to risk the farm on it. Um,
Yep.
so just count the losses and move on. So
Mm.
yeah, I've done all of that. Gone through periods where in the late 80s when we had three surf shops, when we had the whole market in Australia went under.
Oh yeah,
And
the
so
jet.
interest rates went up to 13%. We
Yeah.
had debt on the surf shops, and that nearly crippled us. So
Mm.
yeah, there's a lot of ways to get business wrong for sure.
Yeah, you've got to get back up and get on with it. Take us through, because I know you had a defib business there for a little while. What's the
Yep, I still
backstory
do.
behind that?
Yeah, still do. So
Right. And what's the
um,
name of that business?
so it's called Heart 180,
Yeah.
180, and
Yeah.
that's the perfect amount of time in seconds to get a defibrillator on someone who's stopped breathing.
Hmm.
So nearly 10 years ago, part of my fitness businesses that I had was training groups down in Manly, doing paddling and dry land exercises on harbour beaches. And look, I did it because it would get me out of bed in the morning. I'd train with people, but it
Mm.
became very popular. People would pay money to come down, and I do that each morning, Monday to Friday. And it was mainly corporate guys that would come down and do it and have 20, 30 in a group. And on a given morning, nearly 10 years ago, one of my best mates, his heart, and I ended up resuscitating him until the ambos turned up. And that was 12 minutes. And I thought I'd get him back. He didn't make it. And I found out after the fact from the hospital that had I had a defibrillator close by, then he was 7 times more likely to have survived. And I didn't know that because back in the Circ Club days in the 80s and 90s, there were no such thing as defibs. They
No,
didn't exist.
no.
And so I learnt all this after the fact, learnt that no one knew about them. They weren't in gyms, they weren't in homes, they weren't in businesses. People couldn't even spell defibrillator.
Mm.
People struggled saying it. People didn't know that cardiac arrest is Australia's biggest killer. And
Mm.
I thought, you know what? I'm going to go and do something because my mate died. So I started Heart 180. I started marketing, promoting, and distributing defibs and set up a warehouse just downstairs from where I am here in the office. And we ship them all over the country, and we've had thousands a year go out. And in the last 9.5 years, we've saved over 100 people's lives with the ones that we know about that
Yeah.
we've sent out that someone's been brought back. So that was my passion for a long period of time, and it's been really good. And it was funny. So last year I turned 60
Hmm.
in February, and I, being that sort of goal setting animal that I am, I thought, okay, I'm 60 now. What does 70 look like? So if I had to fast forward 10 years, what's Guy Leech do? How does he act? What's his mental capacity like? What's his physicality like? What are the things that he wants to do that he needs to keep doing because he loves doing them? And
Can I just interject quickly?
Mm,
Doesn't it feel, I don't know how you feel about this aging thing. I still feel like we could be 25 sitting on a beach watching the waves roll in. I have very little, time's distorted for me, and I think it is for lots of people. And when you're little, when you're in
mm,
your 20s and you listen to old people in their 30s, you go, they're so old. And then it kind of old, your definition of old kind of goes through the ages with you, and suddenly 70's old. And then you
mm.
ask a question like you've just asked, and I'm kind of thinking, well, it's not that far away from me either, but for me, it
Yeah,
feels like 200 years away. It just
yeah.
doesn't seem real at all, this aging process.
So there are people that are 30 that act old, and
I,
there's
I think I'm older
seven,
than I act 30.
and there's 70-year-olds that act young.
This
Like
is
who I
true.
hang out with, right? So it's more about your attitude and how you go about your life that basically decides really, sort of where you're at. So for me, I exercise every day. I play golf, with the boys a couple of times a week. The family goes on holidays overseas every year. I I muck around. I'm serious in what I do with work and all that stuff, but I'm constantly laughing and don't take myself serious and just have fun, right? And
Mm,
so and also like I love the idea of still paddling out in the ocean and getting on my mountain bike and doing all those things. And I'm like, I don't want that stuff to end. So it was, it came back then again to like, okay, if you're going to win the cooling out of gold and you got time to do it, what does it look like? What do you need to do during the day to go and give yourself the best chance to win the cooling out of gold? So I'm like, well, when I'm 70, people are going to go, how the fuck is he 70?
mm,
Look at him and look what he does.
mm.
And that's going to be me, right? So,
Yeah.
so I set these goals. I thought, okay, here's what I need to do in a day-to-day life with different rules that
Hmm.
I have across the aging part with the mind and the body. So I'm still in great nick. And then I've set that, and that's what I do. They're my protocols. But
Right.
I literally then started investigating just this whole space with aging, right? Because
Hmm.
we've got an aging population. We've got over 10 million people in Australia over the age of 50 now.
Right.
And so it's a massive part of the 25 million people in the country.
Yeah.
And so people are starting talking about longevity, right? Which was never a thing 10 years ago. It was about balance. And then prior to that, it was fitness. And so
Mm,
we're now in this time where this longevity term that had never been spoken about before has become a thing, right?
mm,
And longevity should be called health span. It's the amount of time you spend on this earth in a healthy way. And so that's my next journey, right? And that's where I connected with you a while back about this platform I'm building called Younger Longer, which is literally a platform to connect experts, these whole list of people that are experts across all the areas of longevity, provide education and these programs in a fun way to the general public so that you get a trusted source of information in an ecosystem where it's all under one rooftop. And that's what I'm building. And I'm doing it because we did research out into the marketplace and asked over 40-year-olds and over 50-year-olds, hey, listen, if you go and search stuff on the web to do with health, wellness, and longevity, do you trust the information that you get back? And over 90% of the people said there's a lot of stuff that we get that we don't believe.
interesting.
And then I thought, well, you know what? Why don't I go and get people that know what they're talking about,
Mm,
that, are experts on gut health and
mm,
brain health and heart health and diabetes and being happy and about how to set winning habits and all these things that go for you to have a better life on this earth and put it all under one rooftop. So you go, I don't need to go anywhere else. I'm just
mm,
going here. And that's
mm.
what the project is. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. And it's because, this, if it is about lifespan, and this is one of those things where there's the blue zones and there's lots of other people who've studied health, but
Mm.
as a society, it's not a health structured model at all. It's like if you
It's
get
busted,
sick, then
right?
you get help.
No, it's
That's
busted.
the only
It's
time.
busted. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the reverse of how it should be.
Yeah.
Whereas,
You worry about, you only come into the system when you've got a problem.
yeah,
And so it's always at the end piece. It's like a defib. Like don't worry about the defib shocking you. Go for a run and eat better
mm,
and get rid of stress so that you're not going to have a heart attack. So we don't need to put the frigging defib on you to go and bring you back again because you've gone and done stupid things leading into it, right?
mm,
So, it's yeah, we've got it all around the wrong way.
mm,
And this comes down to this whole piece around when you said to me, what was the transition like into from being a professional athlete
mm,
into being like a normal person,
mm,
right? And going into the normal world. And a lot of it's about awareness. So it's about, okay, what do I think? How do I feel? What do I think about this? What am I saying to myself in my brain right now? What is that little bloke on the shoulder who's the negative one saying about this whole situation? How do I solve that and sort that problem out? They're all things that people need to do. And the awareness cuts across getting checked up with your health screening.
mm,
Like don't go and have to have stents put into your heart when you could have gone to the cardiologist 12 years ago and had tests done to find out that you've got high cholesterol, and you need to go and change your diet. So, it's, yeah,
but there is a degree of ignorant. There's ignorance is when you haven't been told or there's no awareness
yeah.
around it.
It's
And
not fair if you don't know, but when you know a lot of this stuff, and
mm,
a lot of this stuff is common sense,
mm,
unfortunately, the human beings will only see and deal with what's in front of them.
or
And your
pain
life and
driven.
your journey is based around your circumstances, right?
Mm,
That like I wouldn't have sold defibs if I brought my mate back on that morning
mm,
and I got his heart back. I would have been like, well, I don't need a defib because I used resus and, to get CPR to get him back, right?
mm.
So we only know what we know, but the more you can start looking outside of that, and that's that curiosity piece again, right?
Exactly.
And that education to go, what what don't I know? Because I don't know that much. And how can I keep learning and becoming better? So
And that's why you've got a podcast, which what's the name of your podcast for everyone who's
the
listening?
longevity lounge.
Yeah. And I like it because, you talk about injury, for example, or you talk
Mm.
about different facets of health because it's not lineal and it's not you just have to do one activity for it. It's actually multifaceted and it incorporates not just physical, what goes in your mouth or goes on your skin, it involves the mindset, involves your community. Do you want to just share with us your journey around, what you love talking about when it comes to longevity?
Yeah, so yeah, longevity for me is, I mean, you could go down the track of saying it's about your cellular aging and how your cells are aging, and trying to slow the aging process down. But for me, longevity is about community. It's about
Hmm.
who you hang out with. It's about happiness.
Yeah.
It's about so the pillars for me, movement and exercise solve a lot of problems. Like
Yes.
if you stop moving, the body starts dying
Yeah.
because it's evolved to be an organism, or however you want to say it. The human being's meant to move. So, and structured exercise improves that sort of scale. Definitely what you put in your mouth from a longevity point of view, particularly when you're older. And I always talk about you get given the first 50 years for free,
Hmm.
the body, and then the next 50 you got to earn them. And so things like what you put into in your mouth and goes into your stomach determines a lot of stuff as well. The other one that's super important that I gauge, every night is sleep, because the recovery piece around just regeneration is one of those main pillars. And then I go back to your general health. Like if like you're in the game of analyzing people across those areas, right? With testosterone and so there's testing that you can do that gives a window into your body so that you can actually be proactive and do something out of it. So for me, doing the bloods, getting the heart check, prostate, all these things are all part of that longevity process because you need to be aware of what's going on. And the last one is that community again. The people I hang out with are interested in the things I'm interested in, you
Mm.
know, they don't take themselves too serious. They're good fun. It makes you feel good to be around. So that's my crew that I hang out with. So
And I think that's a very different distinction. I mean, I had years and years in hospitals and emergency and seeing, 84-year-old come in with 16 medications and
mm,
hasn't enjoyed life for the last 10 years. For me, that's not successful health system. That's not longevity. That's really sad. The happiness quotient, the community, the sense of purpose, the sense of contribution, the
yeah,
and the things you're talking about, there's no shortcut for it. And possibly, it's interesting that stat you brought up that over 50-year-olds, when they go to find out about health, they're
mm.
not trusting what they're getting. Like it's,
No, no.
yeah,
There's a level of just mistrust in the information from the web. But wouldn't you say that we're actually are we in a time where we're getting better with people looking to health screening and being a bit more aware because of the aging population? Is that
I
improving?
don't know that there's a trend there at all, to be honest. I think
Mm.
Like I see, and you're pretty data driven. My partner's data driven. You know, they've all got their watches and
Yeah.
they are engaged, but they're a very healthy cohort. There's a direct correlation, I think, between the curiosity in your own health and your numbers. And you know, I do a saliva hormone test every year because
Mm.
sometimes there'll be a silent thing decaying you, and you're not even aware of it because you didn't do a simple test.
Yeah.
You can overdiagnose stuff, I get it, but having no idea and
No,
no
that's right. Well,
barometer of where your health's
you'd
at.
rather overanalyze than underanalyze every day of
Well,
the
it
week.
doesn't make sense. As you say, you know, the guy that had the opportunity to have a stress echo or to have, you know, see that he had, because heart disease doesn't happen overnight. Like the
No,
incidents of where people
it's a
just,
slow burn, right? It's a slow burn.
yeah, you
And
get, you know, get
it's
fatty.
usually a lifestyle issue that's just happened over time, right? Yeah, I mean you do get electrical issues that can be
Yeah.
different and things like that, but as far as the plumbing goes in the heart, that's over time usually. I mean, you could be super unlucky from a genetic point of view, family history,
Mm.
um, but that's a minority.
That's a minority. I'm coronary care trained and I love hearts, and still to this day, you know, we're recording this in 2025, it still remains one of the most impactful areas if people did more preventative health.
Yeah, well, it's your biggest killer, right? So over 40,000 Aussies this year suffer from a heart incident that kills them. And
Yeah.
there's one every 12 minutes that pass away. So like my mate, and
Mm.
so yeah, it's the thing that you need to focus on pretty
Just,
strongly. Like I say to anyone out there, if you're over the age of 40 and you haven't gone to a cardiologist, had a referral, you go and see you need to do it now. And if you're a 30-year-old listening to this and you got a family history of any heart incidents, you
mm,
need to go right now and get checked
mm,
up. Because like I sent after my mate died, I sent 100 fit 39 to
mhm,
70-year-old blokes off to get checked up. So
mhm,
my database of people that train with me, and they would, if you looked at a picture of them, a shot, anyone listening to this would say they're in the top 1% looking fit people for their age that I've seen in the country. Now I
mm,
sent them off. I said, listen, 12 weeks' time, if you haven't been to the cardiologist and had your heart checked, you're not in my group training until you do it because we don't want to be doing this again with the CPR and everything, right?
mm.
So off they went. Five guys straight away had to go in and have stents put in.
Wow.
100, 5%. The
Yeah.
youngest guy, the 39-year-old, was by far the fittest endurance athlete out of our 100. He had two stents put in.
Mm,
So, and then another 12 were on medication for different reasons. And on the outside, they look great. So,
mm.
so yeah,
And I look at I am a huge fan for guys finding out their testosterone levels because I will do saliva or serum testing, but you've got to go to someone who knows what they're doing. But
mm,
guys get flat, depressed,
yep,
lose their mojo, put on weight, don't sleep well. You know, you make testosterone in your sleep for
yep,
starters.
yeah, yeah,
And it just starts that downhill slide. And if they're not exercising, then before they know it, they have very low testosterone levels and just learn to live with it and
Well,
think
I'm
that
assuming as
that's
you
normal.
age, it would is it the pituitary gland that produces?
Comes from the gonadotrophic
Okay, that the
releasing
pituitary
hormone
gland
that,
must be growth
yes, it
hormone.
does.
Yeah,
It sends down two hormones to the testes that
yeah.
then start the production of it.
But it
Um,
would be an aging process where that would not go as well as it does when you're 25 years of age, unless you're exercising and being really super healthy, I would assume.
yes, and that's the
Yeah,
thing with testosterone production, it's very responsive to good sleep. So
yeah.
that's when majority of it's produced. Majority is produced in the testes, and exercise just throws it through the roof.
Mm,
So does interesting mindfulness and meditation, which
okay.
is interesting. So guys, when they go into their cave after work or have that
Yeah,
10-minute reflection time or do
yeah,
meditation, they can boost their testosterone remarkably. And then
yeah.
there's herbs and foods. You've got to be eating good fats and
Yeah,
proteins.
yeah.
And
I'm good with the foods. Yeah,
yeah, but when you look at you know, your average 100 blokes, not the ones that are coming to you,
mm,
but if we went and just grabbed some at a shopping centre and a couple off a footy field and said, "Come
yeah,
on, we're going to analyse you," there would be gaps everywhere, and there might be five, six of them, depending which suburb we picked, that would have a handle on their health and be okay. But the others would definitely have room for improvement.
yeah.
Um, I find a lot of guys when we do the testing, their estrogen's really high.
Yeah.
and they're just unaware of it. And that just throws them in the heart disease category straight away and prostate
Yep.
issues.
Yeah,
So,
no, I'd be keen to do a testosterone test with you just to see
yes,
where
we
I'm
better
at.
check.
It's been years since I've done it, but last time I did it was high
Mm.
for my age, but not like dangerously high. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's the thing there are, as you said, you can go to a cellular level and try and defy age with your telomeres and extend
Mm.
out these anti-aging strategies. That's one element of it. But certainly, because testosterone is dropping, keeping it up to me is one of the
Well,
best things one can do.
that's an indicator of slowing the aging process down, right? So
100%.
so
It
you're
keeps
doing that. It's
everything
like
moving.
it's a gear there that you can affect straight away.
Yeah, and you need it for your heart. Guys need normal to low
Yeah,
estrogen levels to keep their heart healthy. It's just a no-brainer,
yeah.
but
You know, I'll book in with you. I'll definitely do
yeah,
that.
very good, very good. We like it. Well, tell
Yeah,
us where people can. So we know your podcast is.
yeah, the long
Yep, you just
2 to 3 weeks.
Sorry.
We make sure that we don't do it every week. We just make sure we've got guests on that we think everyone will be interested in. So we do it based on that. Yeah, and look out for Younger Longer. Younger Longer will be launching in August. It'll be a one-stop shop for everything to do with longevity and a one of a kind in this space.
Yeah, so younger, longer. Listen to your podcast, and if people are in a space that haven't had a defib, I know as a nurse as well, and that they're good
Yeah,
stats that you know because that you've mentioned because
mm,
that early intervention is where it happens. If
for
you can
sure.
get someone out of an arrhythmia quickly, then they're more likely to survive.
Yeah,
And
so heart180.com.au, that's the website. Like you can contact me directly from Heart 180 and we will look after anyone that comes on board and people get them for their homes, caravans, their boats, their businesses, the local gym.
just
There's
makes
certainly
sense.
something now that have become a lot more common, which is good.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Well, thank you so much, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the younger, longer project unravel because
Thanks, Sam.
you're just going to help so many people, and it's fantastic to see you still passionate and driven
Yeah.
by health and helping people. I love it.
Yeah, it's good fun, right? It's good fun.
Yeah,
It's all part of the strategy of doing things you like doing. So
yeah. No, thank you very much for coming on.
thanks, Sam. Good job.
Thanks.